welcome to this week's episode of Chasing the Whimsy. I'm your host, Ben, and I'm here with
Liam.
Liam, what is today?
Last part of episode 37.
It is the last day. It's the last trip of TESD Town, episodes 37. We had two other stops prior to today. We had Jay Sarge. He's going to be on Monday. We had Ming Chen on Wednesday. Today, our last guest of 37 is born and raised in New Jersey, finding local fame in '96 when he found his breakout role as Steve Dave Pulaski in indie cult classic Mallrats, and reprised his role multiple times over the years. He also leaves his mark as inspiration for what would become Randall Graves, arguably one of the best characters in the View Askew universe. Humble and never letting his local fame go to his head unless he's checking his coat. This person was destined to do great things. He has taken a path that may be unconventional to most and has a unique work ethic, but the main constant would be remaining true to himself and unapologetic for who he is. This man's greatness began early, winning the Scholastic Award in 6th grade. Early IQ tests would show an IQ exceeding somewhere over 140. Being close to indie film and a member of the Horror Writers Association, would branch out and try his hand at directing his own film, Vulgar. Vulgar was a dark comedy about a struggling kid's party clown, pivoting his role to bachelorette party clown and the work hazards of making such a change. Sure, the movie was met with mixed reviews, but over time found its audience. He would also team with childhood friend Walt Fanboy Flanagan and create several comic books. Carney, War of the Undead, Cryptozoic Man. Guest starring on early episodes of Smodcast, his true calling would emerge. In February of 2010, starting as a form of therapy, he would team up with friends Walt and Brian Quinn, before IJ, to record a weekly podcast, Tell 'em Steve Dave. Consistently the number 2 podcast on the Smodco podcast network for years, they would break away from Smodco and build a content creating empire available on Patreon. Running close to 14 years with over 585 episodes, Tell 'em Steve Dave would win the 2010 Podcast Awards for People's Choice and Best Comedy, named Best of 2010 Audio Podcast on iTunes, winner of the 2012 Stitcher Awards for Best Entertainment and Pulp Culture, winner of the 2016 Second Annual Kevin Allison Excellence in Podcast Award, and in 2021 Podcast Award for Best Comedy and Listener Influencer of the Year. TESD would also create a full-length puppet theater DVD, 2 audiobooks still available on audible.com, Fairy Retail Theater, and A Small Fist of Dollars. It was also the first podcast to create not 1, but 2 vinyls, and many other projects. Tell 'em Steve Dave podcast was also the inspiration behind the hit AMC reality TV show Comic Book Men that ran 7 seasons and 96 episodes. But none of those things would compare to his true calling as father figure to his niece Sage, and finally settling down and marrying Mary Beth. Before we leave Tell 'em Steve Dave Town, we have the pleasure of talking to 1/3 of Tell 'em Steve Dave. Thank you and welcome, Bryan Johnson.
Well, thank you for having me. I guess the other 2/3 are too big, huh?
I don't know where they were. I emailed everybody. I was like, you're the only one that replied back. So we'll get the other ones back after they find out how much fun this is. They're going to be begging to come on.
Especially if they hear my intro, they're going to be jealous, I think.
Right? Yeah, I'll keep theirs super small.
Yeah, like they did some stuff, and then that's it.
Yeah, Walt Flanagan drew a couple of things, and one thinks he's the Joker.
Right.
The 3rd-ranked Joker on Practical Jokers. So how have you been?
I've been all right. I've been sick. That's I tried to bail on you, but you remained steadfast and strong, and you wouldn't let me.
I would not let you. I was like, well, episode 37 was kind of a big one. We've been kind of pushing it. We have the whole theme a little bit So I was like,
Right.
I get you're sick, and I was like, we can reschedule if we needed to, but I was like, please don't do it.
Yeah.
No, but I appreciate you
understood.
taking the time. I know you're sick, so I'm glad that you're here and hanging out with us. Did you take a look at the webcomic that we did for you guys or for us, but about you?
I did not. Where is this?
Oh,
Did you
let's
send it to
see.
me?
I emailed it. Oh, I emailed it to Mary Beth at some point. I'll find it for you. Let's see. Let's do. All right. I'll find it real quick, and then while I'm finding it,
You
We
should.
can talk about how I'll bring down my wrath on her for not showing me prior.
right, that's what we're talking about.
Right here, chasing those.
Well, to be fair, I thought Mary Beth would have showed it because it was a cute nod. So, Ryan, we've been doing this is episode 37. We started with Ming Chen in a shared universe, did his little class, and within our universe, we introduced Tell Steve Dave because we doxed you.
Right, I recall that. Yeah, our beginnings are that, in case people are wondering, you were looking to get a hold of us and you called Airport Plaza, who, for whatever reason, decided to give you our personal information.
Right.
And so you called Walt and you called me. Because
Uh,
you were coming to town to say hi, right?
yeah.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
It was so funny. And then so we appreciate you shouting us out on the podcast. But here you go. Here's your webcomic. So while we were doing this, like since we've been doing the podcast, I had I just have like everything that we do in the podcast, we kind of do to kind of what's the saying? Telling Steve Dave gives and the world takes. So
TESD makes, the world takes.
yes.
Yeah.
So we kind of not necessarily model after Telling Steve Dave, but a lot of inspiration definitely from you guys. Our podcast doesn't really have a theme. It's kind of just me and Liam just hanging out, just chit chatting. So, but yeah, we made a little web comic for you. This is the conversation you and I had.
Yeah, I see that. I did not see this prior. Yeah, for some reason, Mary Beth never showed me.
I thought it was funny. It was definitely wanted to be the first. I had this idea for this web comic. So I have my friend Sarah drawn these up for us, and I said the first one has to be of us doxing you. So
doxing of TESD.
I love it, and I just like the idea of me just sitting there and being like, "What are you doing?" Because you say we were best friends.
No, it was funny because we went on what's it called? He dropped me off at school, and no, it was the summer. He dropped me off at home, and like he texted me randomly, and he's like, "Listen to like the first like couple minutes of the most recent TESD episode." And it was just like, it was so like surreal because we just started freaking out because you said our names and it was like, we doxed you. And it was just so weird how like, as soon as we started a podcast, this happened. And like, it was just so surreal at that moment that we were texting like Bryan Johnson.
Now look at you. How far has it gotten you?
Like I said, the episodes are Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So listen to Ming Chen's because he blew us up a little bit. And since we started July 2nd, we have the website, we got all the socials, like a web comic. I live stream every week. We're consistent uploading episodes. So we're just like, what is Tom and Steve Dave doing? They do extra content. We're making extra content. They're like, Walt draws. I'm like, I'll find somebody who draws.
Yeah, I don't know what we would do if Walt couldn't draw.
Oh,
the number of things that like even I'm like, oh, who drew this? And then he's like, oh, I did. Who made this? Who designed this? It's pretty incredible.
And you've loved his artwork since what, high school, junior high? Wild ass?
5th grade, wild ass. Yeah, that was 5th grade back in the day.
Right.
1978 or 79, somewhere around
Lord.
there. Yeah.
I think Liam has a happy birthday for somebody.
Well, I was looking on the Instagram and it was Sage's, I think it was 18th, right?
Yeah, she just turned 18.
Like, I mean, we've been listening, like we saw her on Comic Book Man and following her since she was tiny. And it's just crazy to think like she's 18, Liam's 13 now. And it's just like, where does the time go?
You're gonna
like
start
hearing
one,
her with
yeah.
like the what's it called, the plugs, and hearing her when she was little, and
All the
then,
old commercials.
yeah, and then now she's like 18. It's
Yeah.
weird because I've been listening forever too, and I think what's it called? He wants to say that I'm the youngest.
TESD Ant. So Liam's been listening since like he was aware of Tell 'em Steve Dave at 3 in 2013, and then really started getting into Tell 'em Steve Dave after Puppet Theater when I showed it to him in like 2015. So when he saw all the puppets and then was able to put a puppet face to a name on the podcast, he was like, "Oh, I'm all interested in it." So he's kind of been listening for like 8 years consciously and kind of just following your guys' journey through Comic Book Men, IJ, and just everything else.
Right. What's
So
more
would
interesting
he?
than following a bunch of old men, and their daily travails?
Oh, but you guys are funny. You guys have a thing. I love it. Would he not be close to, if not the youngest, Tell 'em Steve Dave fan that you know of?
That I'm aware of. Yeah. There's been a couple that, parents who listened with their kids that have
Yeah,
been like probably like 10, 11, somewhere in there.
yeah.
But none so young as 3. Unless parents do also, like, when they have a baby, they claim baby aunt status. So
All right.
they're not, even though they're not really listeners, we got to welcome them into the fold.
All right. We got a 3-year-old now, so I can. So she's an aunt.
There you go. There you go.
So you were just on the IJ cruise. How was
Yes.
that? You were there for what, 4 days, 5 days?
I think it's Monday through Friday. So
Okay.
yeah, it's like Monday afternoon through Friday morning. It's great. If
How
they
many
ever
times have
do
you been
another
on there
one,
now?
that was the 5th one.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so since 2016, so over 8 years, been on the 5 of the cruises.
Oh, that's
It's
exciting.
they're a really good time, and this time more so than any other trip before it. There were so many ants on the cruise. Like, we had a meetup at one point, like an ant meetup, and there were a good couple hundred people there, just Tell 'em Steve Dave listeners, and it was it's interesting, as you sit there and you watch everybody mingling and talking and meeting each other for the first time. It's kind of, it gives you a warm feeling that you
All right.
created something that put together this community. And what's nicer is they don't really give a shit about you. They care about each other. Like, they're happy to say hi and get a picture and then move on to talk to their real friends.
Right. Well, they hang out with you every week, and then they see these guys once on the cruise.
Yeah.
Did Ming Chen give you a heads up about us on the cruise? He said he was going to.
He did not. I don't know. Maybe that's the way Ming Chen does it.
Right.
He's full of shit, Ming Chen.
He was nice. He had a couple of Ming Chen things to say about you, but it was all with love though. But
Of course.
between Mary Beth and Ming, man, like, this is why it was so hard to get Bryan Johnson. Like, we could have had you weeks ago, but they were sabotaging us because they knew you were going to be better than they were.
Yeah, that's Ming's greatest fear is, I mean, he lives in everybody's shadow because he's a small guy, but he certainly lives in the shadow of Tell 'em Steve Dave. He's like our little brother,
Right.
I mean,
that was his role on Comic Book Men, to be the little brother that gets picked on.
Right.
you're pushing through. I mean, you might be coming for his Maverick Award. You never know.
That's true. You can only remain a Maverick. See, he'll start resting on his laurels.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the way Ming Chen operates. And then next thing you know, he'll get scooped. He got scooped by Jimmy the Hair Guy in the rap battle.
Oh, that's a spoiler, everybody.
Mhm.
So all of those who haven't, because the episode that you guys just dropped with Sexy Lawyer, you guys haven't even talked about that much on the cruise yet. So we got that's an exclusive right there, guys. Jimmy
Yeah.
the Hair Guy owns Ming Chen.
Well, we kind of have a similar story to Jimmy the Hair Guy, but not as much money, because back when you guys were doing the auction sale for
Nate.
there was like a original art cover of the
Vinyl Cast 1.
the Vinyl Cast 1, and we were one of the main bidders, like, who were going going head and head against some of the other guys late. And I don't remember how much we ended up wanting to bid.
Yeah, because we do the Patreon, we buy the DVDs, we buy the Vinyl Cast, so we love all your merch. We got your mugshot shirt. I'm trying to find one in his size for him so he can wear it to school. So we love the merch, and you guys were like, hey, we want to help Nate out. His house burned down. So I was like, I jumped on the Patreon and I bidded on a couple of things. I was like, we have to have the original art. And we started throwing bids out for this thing for like $1,000 and then 15. And then like, I don't know who got it, but I sat my alarm, make sure, and I was fighting one guy and it sold for over $2,200. So
oh yeah,
we didn't win it, but we were close. But for a second there, I was like, what am I doing? Like, why are we spending $2,200? I'm like, we could have spent that money. We could have flown over. We could have taken the IJ cruise.
yeah. You would have been horrified if you won. You were like, oh my god, what do I do now?
That's what the thought was. He was like saying, he's like, what are we gonna do when we win it?
He got me all worked up. He's like, you should get it. You should get it.
I'm like, it's an investment. It's a one-time piece. You're never. It's the only time you'd be able to get it.
I'd have to put it up on the wall here to kind of just like, hey, everybody, look at what I spent money on.
Right now, the person who won it is trying to get your number to see if he can unload it on you.
Hey, hey, for way less than the 1,200, I would be happy with a Walt original. I worked with Ming and got a.
Oh wait, it was Walt's art.
Yeah, it was the.
Oh,
yeah,
I thought it was the record album. Oh, if it's Walt's art, that's a totally different story. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is actually an investment. Yeah, I would agree with that. I thought for some reason I thought it was
just the vinyl cast.
Yeah, the signed vinyl cast. And I was like, who's paying $2,200 for that?
Right.
Now it makes sense.
What was
I told you I was sick.
I know, right? What was funny was Ming on Twitter posted a picture of the Comic Book Man DVD Blu-ray.
Mm-hmm.
It has you, Bry, Walt, Get 'em, and Sunday Jeff and you on it. And he posted it, a picture of it. So I went on to eBay and I was like fighting a guy for it. And I think it got to a point where Ming just pulled it because the whatever number I was at, he was like, that's too much. He's like, I can't have people paying like hundreds of dollars for it. And I told Ming, I texted him, I'm like, I told you guys I like the merch, and I got 5 signatures. I can't compete with that. But I eventually got my hands on one, so I got a Blu-ray of you guys with all your signatures on it. So
gotcha. Now, did I hear you correctly earlier? You said you took the Ming Chen Masterclass in podcasting.
I did take the Ming Chen Masterclass.
Now, what's involved with something like that? How do you do it? Like, I'm assuming you do it virtually.
Yeah.
Okay.
What he did is we went on a Zoom call and he had like kind of a slideshow and he kind of walked us through the like how to even start, like how are we gonna get it promoted, how are we gonna get it out to the world, how are we gonna do social media, like SoundCloud, is it gonna go on Spotify, Apple, and he just kind of ran us through it for 45 minutes to an hour, and at the end he kind of gave us our first taste of a podcast when we were just on the Zoom, and he made us ask some questions and kind of just running through all the basics, and then just keep posting. Like he's been keeping up with us through this whole time since, like, when did we do the podcast class?
July.
Yeah.
Oh, and he keeps up with you to make sure you're still plugging away at it.
Well, yeah, a little bit.
Or is he trying to sell you more classes?
No, what was interesting, he hasn't really sold us much of anything after that. But
no, he's a terrible businessman then. What's the matter with this guy?
He's got 3 podcast studios. I'm like, you're supposed to get a 4th one. You're supposed to be, asking me for more stuff and being like, you need more episodes.
Yeah, he's supposed to always be closing, right? Isn't that the deal?
Really nice guy, but yeah, I asked a bunch of questions because part of it was on his birthday when he turned 13. What we started doing was recording. I bought a little recorder and we'd leave it in the car, and we would just have weird conversations in the when I drive him to and from home. And after we were recording those for his birthday, I was like, let's sit down and actually have like an interview, because I'm like, I'll save this, and then years later we can go back and we can listen to him again and see what your answers were, like 5 years apart. And then right after that, he was like, let's do a podcast. I was like, okay. And he's like, let's do it tomorrow. And I'm like, I can't, like, we can't do it tomorrow. But he's 13, so 13-year-olds suck. So part of the deal was we'll do a podcast, but I want him to do the podcast class. Now, to be fair, I did originally try to go to Creaky Studios, but he doesn't seem to be doing that class anymore.
Oh no.
No, so
Well, I think he does audio stuff, right? His
Yeah.
course was more audio based.
So, but yeah, so I told him to spend some of his birthday money on the podcast class, and then I'd buy all the equipment and stuff. So,
Right.
and since then, man, we've just been trucking along, just doing our thing. A lot of it comes from that idea of what was it, like somewhere in like the 250s, Quinn was talking to Walt about it. It was like, how interesting is it that your kids can go back, 10, 15, 20 years later and hear hundreds of hours of Walt talking, and horrified Walt, obviously, but that same concept. When I hit 40, I was like, oh man, like what's gonna happen? Like I'm thinking I'm gonna die soon. I'm like, everybody's gonna die soon. I'm like, I need to leave a record of who Ben was. So that's kind of where the podcast starts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder sometimes, like, if my father had been like, say, a radio guy,
Right.
the equivalent, would I? And I was just like, I just discovered it. Like, how much would I go back and listen to? Like, I would definitely want to listen to some of it,
Right.
but hundreds of hours, I don't know. It depends on how good at it he was.
You just wait for somebody to give you a highlight reel.
Yeah, super cut or something like that.
Right. You are a member of the Horror Writers Association, yeah?
I was at one time. I haven't paid dues in a while. I'm not sure what their feelings are about that. So I may be a member in jeopardy.
You've always liked telling stories, and you're very creative. What gets you into looking into like horror writing, and what were some of the things that you started with when you started writing?
Horror stuff. I would just write for fun when I was young. Like, I remember watching horror movies with my mom when she would come home. She would work at a nursing home. She worked a 3 to 11 shift, and there was this sort of like a chiller theater type show on, where they had horror movies on at like midnight. So she would come home, I would come upstairs, we'd watch horror movies together. So that's kind of what got me into the genre. And then from there, it was just a matter of like just liking to make up stories. Just as a kid.
Um,
And the Horror Writers Association thing, the only reason I did it was to get another award or to get another membership type thing. Just it was something to do. But I figured, I was like, I qualify, right? Why not? Let me do it.
So when you're writing stuff, like, what is like some of that process of the ideas that you come up with that are maybe less than popular? I read Carney, and
Right.
there's some fucked up shit in there. So like like, where does it come from? And then do you get deterred thinking that you're going to scare away a certain population or a certain audience?
I've never really, like, with this, anything that I've written or anything that we've worked on, I don't think about the mainstream audience, because that's not really who we're appealing to,
Right.
The people that's the people that we appeal to, we know we have sort of a captive audience, and we know if we do something, they might not like it, but they'll at least give it a chance.
Right.
There's plenty of Patreon stuff that's not for everybody, but then
Right.
there's Patreon stuff that people just love, that they adore it.
The TESD Teen Beat.
What's that?
The Teen Beat magazine.
Teen Beat magazine, everybody loved.
That's so much fun.
You'd be hard pressed to find somebody who disliked that magazine.
I almost clipped out one of the inserts and mailed it in. He had some ridiculous number on there for, and I was like, I know it's a joke, but I'm like, I should fill this out, but I didn't want to cut mine.
Yeah, probably better off.
Right. The TESD audience, and you kind of just writing to a smaller audience. I like the approach, and that's kind of what we're doing here at Whimsy. We really focus a lot on like that community aspect, kind of like how you guys built your TESD Town. We're kind of building whatever gnomes do, and kind of just really focusing on like we're still trying to find part of our audience, families, some kids, some people who can relate to like some of our stories and conversations and stuff. Do you ever wish like you guys try to push more mainstream? Because obviously there's money in mainstream, but
No, not really. No, I figure like our audience was always going to be what it is.
right,
I don't think like I don't know that any of us, me, Q, or Walt, have any sort of insight as to into like, well, what could we do that would make it more popular with the mainstream?
right,
It's like we're too old.
right,
We're all middle-aged white guys. Like nobody cares what we think or what we have to say, except for a very small select group of people, you know,
right.
who have sort of discovered it and have the same sense of humor, same sensibilities, that type thing.
But even with a small group in the Patreon, you guys have now been able to basically create a job and a career doing Patreon content, right? So like
Right.
you don't need to be you don't need like these illusions of grandeur of like being like number one on anything. You just give us our couple thousand people willing to give us a couple of bucks and we'll just do our thing and have some fun with it. And you guys are making a living now off of the Patreon stuff, you know?
Yeah, to me, that's you know, there are times when Walt, you know, he gets stopped at the border. He doesn't want to admit that he's a podcaster, but it's like I say, like, hey, if you're able to podcast for a living, you know, you're able to pay your bills doing it. That's pretty good.
Right.
You know, then
Well,
you don't have to go get a job that you don't want to do.
right. Well, I'm working 2 jobs right now, and I'm still trying to find. And what's fun is like I'm passionate about it. It's like we're still early in on it. I'm being super creative, coming up with ideas. So, like the idea, what's nice is like talking to you and to Ming is like you don't have to be mainstream. Like you can make a living with just your little niche of people as long as you're consistent and they can, you know, people willing to follow you. So I love the idea that as we continue to do this is like obviously we're gonna tweet to everybody and try to snag some new people here and there, but we're not looking to be, you know, the Joe Rogans or Mr.
Michelle
Beasts.
Obama.
Yeah,
Yeah, none of us. The only person who's Joe Rogan is Joe Rogan, right?
right.
Like, and Joe Rogan didn't set out to be like, I'm gonna be Joe Rogan. It was just an evolution
Yeah,
of things that happened within his career to the point where people took notice and they're like, wow, this dude is interesting and this dude does have like a unique perspective on things and I want to listen to him,
right.
you know.
When you worked a little bit with indie film. You in your intro, I mentioned you wrote and directed Vulgar.
Yes,
Um,
way back in the day.
way back in the day. That's 96 ish.
No, it's probably about 99 right in
Okay.
there. 97 to 99 right in that area.
Where did that idea come from?
That came from, well, Walt had the original View Askew mascot was a clown with
Yeah.
the clapboard and all that stuff. And Kevin and Walt and I were down at the Quick Stop one day. We were just shooting the shit, talking about what his story would be, and you know, just sort of came up with the basic idea there. And then I asked Kevin, like, hey, would you mind if I wrote it? Because you know, he said he was going to write it, but Kevin has different sensibilities than that, you
Right.
know. So I said, hey, do you mind if I write it? And he said, sure, go right ahead. And that's sort of the way it happened. But yeah, Walt was instrumental in that creation of that story, because it was Walt's idea that he's like, you know, he's fallen on hard times, but like he's just putting his money away, he's just saving it up, you know.
Walt Flanagan is the unsung hero of TESD Town. He's a
You think
huge
people
part.
don't sing his praises? You think he's
I,
unsung?
I don't know. Like I think people like him, but I don't think they fully grasp the influence that he has on like the people that we like. We like Kevin Smith, we like Jason Mewes, and we like Bryan Johnson. But like behind all these other great men, there's a Walt Flanagan just busting their balls.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, that's
I
fun.
wouldn't call him unsung. I think Walt gets a lot of credit because Walt does a lot, you know.
He does a lot, and you guys do a great job highlighting a lot of the stuff he does. The Christmas episodes are obviously a staple, but yeah, I mean, early on, he was always a little bit quiet, but now I love hearing and seeing all the Patreon stuff, and just seeing how creative he's just blowing up, and he's just trying everything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good thing about Patreon is you can try anything, you know. It
Right.
doesn't matter if it's a show about reading catalogs, if it's a show about Kiss, if it's a show about Sunday Jeff, you know, or Jimmy the Hair Guy, you're able to try out anything you want because it's, you know, and get immediate results too, or immediate feedback. I mean,
Right. I don't want to take full credit for TV Guides on TV Guide, but our episode 2, which would have been right around like July 9th, we were doing a episode where Liam was giving me like Zoomer lingo and slang, and I had to try to figure it out. And then it kind of like turned into me educating him about growing up back in the day. And there was a 5-minute segment where I was just laughing all the way through it, but trying to explain to Liam what a TV guide was. And then like a month later, we heard you guys with the Patreon. So I was like, oh, they took that from me. But it was interesting.
That gets dangerous sitting in your house thinking things like that.
Right? Well, I think what was the funniest part about it was it's I guess that's all we do in our 40s and 50s is you just think about the old days. We both came up with this idea for a TV guide concept because I was thinking I was already looking for like TV guides. And I was like, hey, Liam, let's look through one and kind of play with it a little bit. And you guys already did it. And those episodes are fantastic.
Yeah,
I
those
love
are fun.
it.
Well, you're reaching back to like, you know, Liam's what, 13? You know, like everybody remembers TV from 13 years ago.
Right.
It's difficult to remember TV from 40 to 45 years ago.
Like I don't remember. You guys had mentioned that there was a VCR code that would record like whatever code it was for.
Certain shows, yeah, it would, like, as opposed to setting up your whole, you know, start recording at noon, stop recording at 1, blah blah blah. It was just it was like a 7-digit code. I think it was 7 digits.
Yeah,
that you would just plug in there.
And like that was already even like before me, so I don't even remember that. But yeah, those episodes are fun. All the stuff you guys do on Patreon is fantastic. What's your favorite Patreon show?
Favorite Patreon show is it might be TV Guys.
That is fun.
Yeah, it might be because you get to sit around and really reminisce. Any show where like I'm reminiscing about things that I liked, you know. We just did one about department stores. You know, a show about department stores that we used to visit and now are now defunct. Like there's something, you know, hauntingly beautiful about these defunct chain stores that used to exist.
Right.
And well, how old are you?
I'm 40.
You're 40. Okay, so yeah, you're even younger than Q and those guys. So there's stuff. Yeah, there's certain things, I guess, and also like regionally, it's like you didn't have the same stores in Arizona as we're gonna have in New Jersey, right?
Right.
So like you're learning different shit about or different things about different.
Yeah, and it's funny because I fall down these rabbit holes on YouTube of just like old media or lost media, and it's just like, oh my god, like everything was so weird back then, even old commercials and stuff. I fall down those rabbit holes and be like, I remember the good old days when we had commercials. Like, let's see. Trying to think. I thought I had a cool Patreon thing. I got nothing. All right, podcasting. You originally started it kind of as a therapy, and over the 13 years, and again, Liam's been listening forever. So, like, how is it to be that vulnerable and tell all of those stories of the goods and the bads and the ups and the downs and everything, like all your problems in season 2 of Comic Book Men? Like, how is it to do that every week to like such an audience?
Well, it doesn't really feel like you're talking to anyone because you're just, you know, as I'm sitting there, I'm talking to my friends. I'm just talking to Walt and Q and get him if he's on mic. So it doesn't feel like I'm talking to an audience, you know, an audience of however many people. But like back in the day, I doubt you listened to Howard Stern when you
a little bit. I watched some of the VH1 stuff when he was because I like to watch it, but for a little bit, probably like early years of high school, I would wake up early and listen to him, and I probably followed him for a year, and then when did I listened to him when he had like the sideshows like Beetlejuice and all, like
Whack
some
Packers.
of those characters. Yeah,
The Whack Packers, yeah. Well, like I grew up on Stern from like probably 11th grade on. And one of the things that always impressed me about him was how, at least as far as I knew, how honest he was being about his home life and the things that bothered him and the things that pissed him off and the things that made him happy. And when we started doing it, I figured, like, what's the point of doing it unless you're going to do it like that?
Mhm.
You know, where you sort of bare your soul and let other people know that, like, and this wasn't the intention in the beginning, but letting other people know, like, hey, you're not alone. You know, you're depressed. Well, so am I.
Right.
And even like during like having a TV show and having a pretty decent podcast, it's like if you're still be able to be depressed through that, it's like people can relate to that. They can
Mhm.
relate to, like, no matter how good they have it, it's like, I don't know, there's still something wrong. There's still something there that's preventing me from enjoying this fully.
Right, because like podcast, TV show, and you obviously like people always like assume like, oh, they're on TV, they're rich, they're happy, and then you're just like, no, it's all a mess.
Oh yeah, no, that's not the case at all. And you know, TV is relative too. It's like, you know, we were on a small cable station, you know,
Mhm.
basically. So it's like we're not making Friends money.
Right.
You know, we're not even making Friends, you know, commercial money. You know, so
It's almost weird that no one
I
does
think it's
one.
easy just to assume, you
Yeah.
know, but and that's, you know, that's where the podcast comes in handy, is like, you know, you get to get everything out there, the good and the bad, and you know, if you do that long enough, people will form an opinion about you, also good or bad, you know,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that's why, you know, you get people like, you know, at Reddit, it's like Reddit, well, you know, some of them may not be fans of mine, that's fine, but it's like I challenge you to go out there and spill out everything, every little piece of dirt, every little insecurity you have, every, you know, all that shit, every little like doubt you have about yourself, whatever the case is, you go out and do that for years on end and see how
Right.
likable you are,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, because like because the with our podcast similar to like we kind of like it's almost like Seinfeldish. It's a podcast about nothing, but it's just whatever. So as we're kind of podcasting, I try to come up with some ideas and some themes similar to kind of how Walt kind of sometimes helps drive certain episodes. But um, we're inviting all of our families. So we've had my sisters on, I'm gonna have my dad on, my grandma's been on, um, his mom, stepdad. So like we're trying to invite all these kind of people in, and we're having some fun. But every once in a while, we find ourselves in some weirder conversations where like we're whimsy and we're having fun. And what's interesting is every once in a while we'll jump down these rabbit holes, and we start talking like kind of like deep and kind of like philosophical and kind of just getting into because it's this idea of I've been through my teens and my 20s and they're like they were fun but there's a mess. You're going to find all these things. You're going to get jobs, you're going to get fired, you're going to have a girlfriend, you're going to break up, or you're going to be depressed. And it's interesting to with him is to kind of be like heads up, here's some of my story and kind of just relating back and forth a little bit and just um you know I haven't really been shy too much about much of anything on the podcast. We try to stay away from a couple of topics, but for the most part, yeah, I like the idea of just
Branching out of the normal fun stuff that we usually do.
yeah, like we have some fun. But if something serious comes up, it happens, and it's real, and I like it because it is relatable, and people kind of have that like, oh yeah, like you were saying, like you're depressed. People are like lots of people are depressed, and I do like that idea of that likability of or that relatability that people will have with the podcast. What are some of your favorite Tell 'em Steve Dave moments? And
Favorite Tell 'em Steve Dave moments?
yeah,
One of my favorites is when it's very early on. I can't remember what episode, but I would say it's probably within the first 20 or 30 or something, where Walt is talking to Q and wondering why he has to drink all the time. And he says, you know, you act like this big fat frat boy or something like that. And Q goes, why fat? And there was something about, like, you know, he could bear the insults, he could tolerate the insults, he could suffer it, but There was something about calling him fat that was just so unnecessary to the equation that it just, I don't know. It's one of those times I think back and I'm like, I might have a heart attack. I'm laughing so hard at this. That's one of those moments. All of like the first making hay
Megan Hay was
is
fantastic.
is really fun. Those are some of my favorite moments on there. Just talking to some of those people, like going to Dennis's magazine stand and all that stuff.
Making Hay 3 is almost as good as 1, but 1 is still a classic. 2 is okay. I mean, it's 2. It's just like every other sequel. They're kind of like
Yep.
okay, but 3 was fantastic. What you guys did for was that 400?
400, yeah.
But the early stuff was obviously pretty good, and it's funny. What was it? 25 Houston, we have a problem. I
Oh,
just
right.
like how I just like how that whole commentary just kind of just like Walt didn't talk for 9 minutes, and then 3 weeks in, you guys are like still talking about Toad, and you're like, why are we still talking about Houston?
Yeah, those are examples of like what I like about the show is even if it goes south, even if it falls apart, there's still something salvageable about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
You
the bachelorette party with like your brother, and he just started going down and like he was drunk and
Oh, your bachelor
Oh,
party.
right, yeah. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Yeah, like even if it's falling apart, there's still comedy to be and jokes to be mined from it.
Right. Well, it's funny, and they're always like a surprise too, because you never see him coming. Like the episodes where get him like almost died, like he like like was
Oh, it had like
seizing.
some kind of seizure or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or when Walt breaks
iPad.
the iPad and gets pissed off, and like those are great episodes because
It shows
everything
emotion and it shows character.
and everything turns into like real. Like I am really upset, and then the way that you guys are able to kind of talk through it a little bit, I think it's important. I think it's interesting because when it's too easy to just get pissed off and just walk away, but to sit there and be able to kind of talk it out a little bit and kind of diffuse the situation a little bit, it's fantastic.
Like when you guys talked about Walt when he was like gone for like what was it, like 2 months because he was
When
like
he got sick.
yeah, when he got really sick, and
Yeah.
like you guys sat there and you guys just talked and like just hearing how sad he was, and like now with the dog, right?
Yes.
And that like that's when the moments get real, and like I feel like every podcast needs that, and not everything can be like happy sometimes because you just got to show realness and like character, so it's not like kind of like fake, if you know what I mean.
You guys are real, man. That's why we like Tone Steve Dave.
Keep it
Anybody
real.
listening to this, obviously, we've been talking about Tone Steve Dave almost every other episode sometimes. You guys are fantastic episode, even going all the way. I think I'm on my 3rd run through all of the episodes. We played in the car all the time. So it's fun to kind of go back and to kind of hear some of the old stories I'm familiar with, and then it's like, oh, okay. And then kind of know where the story ends. It's always kind of fun to hear those early, like these different situations and stuff that you guys get into.
Yeah, people sometimes will come up to me, hey, do you remember this? Do you remember that? And it's like, no, because I haven't listened to the catalog 3 times. We do it, and then I'll go through it, to edit it, and then that's it. Then I never hear it ever again. So sometimes people will remind me of stuff that we've said or things we've done, and I'm like, I have absolutely no recollection of that because you got to figure, Tell Them Steve Dave plus Tell Them Steve Dave Patreon plus Comic Book Men plus View Askew stuff plus age, all that stuff. It's just like it all just starts to swirl after a while.
Well, I know, and it's funny because like when because I was thinking, I was like when we were like writing out what we wanted to kind of talk about, I was like, I don't think we can really talk about like specific episodes. I'm like, we can't expect anybody to remember 585 episodes.
Yeah, it's a little much. Yeah.
So, but yeah, there are definitely certain moments. Obviously, anything you guys put in the puppet theater. Would you guys ever consider doing another puppet theater?
I think we would, but it's just like these days, the technology has gotten to the point where we probably wouldn't have to do your standard,
Yeah.
puppets. Although I thought it looked great. It has a definite charm to it. Like I'd rather do it that way. But I remember the guy Thorne at the time was just like it was such a pain in the ass to do that I think even as like a young go-getting kind of guy, he was still like, this is too much.
I bit
I
off
don't
more than I
want
could
to deal
chew.
with this shit ever again. I mean, even the guys from South Park said that, right? With Team America,
Yeah.
they were like, we'll never do it again. It's just too much trouble.
Right. Because you guys make lots of like ideas and projects, and some of them you never come to fruition. But when you guys pick a project and you finance it, you guys go big, making clay, the TESD TV, elephants in the room.
Yeah.
You guys go big on your projects when you guys like settle on one.
Yeah, those are fun to do. And it's great when you had like with Elephants in the Room, we had the comic book men, camera and audio guys at our disposal. So we are like, hey, would you mind, helping us out with this? So now you have a professional TV crew helping you with your
Right.
project, just because of happenstance
I
or
think
circumstance.
what I love most about you guys is I talked a little bit about it with Ming, is like since I've been doing this podcast a little bit, and as I'm working and I do all of my editing, and I post everything and I do all the socials. So I like the idea of being a part of the whole process. And then as I do it, I get all these emails from people, or anytime I live stream, I get people emailing me and they're like, I can help you with your audio, I can help you with your video, I can do all the social media stuff. And it's like I'm 37 episodes in. I'm like, I barely have an idea what the hell we're doing. I like what I'm doing. And I like that you guys have always like kept it very like indie. Like you guys are just like, we're gonna do it on a poker table for years, and we're gonna buy and like we're just gonna do it at the same table. So I love the idea that you guys, kind of filter the money into like the projects versus like we need to just decorate more and have more stuff. You're like, we just need a table and mics. And I love the
We don't
idea.
have a typical studio, definitely
Yeah,
not.
I think that's all we got for you right now. We appreciate
Okay.
you guys for coming on. We will definitely. We talked to Ming. He's going to come on for our 1 year, so that's sometime in like July. But we'd love to have you back. Do Bryan, does Quinn or Walt, do they do like random interviews or kind of?
I don't think Q really does that much because he's an extremely busy guy. Once in a while, you'll catch Walt doing them. So
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
I wouldn't
Well,
rule out Walt.
I'll reach out. Again, I appreciate you for coming on.
I mean, you have our numbers, so
I've been, for the most part, pretty respectful. Every once in a while, like, oh, just text him. I'm like, I can't just text the guy. I'm like, I'm going to send an email. We're gonna filter it through Mary Beth for a minute. We're going to be professionals about this. But it did get to a point where I'm like, all right, I got to text you personally now. But we thank you. We tag you on some stuff. And then, like I said, this episode will come out on Friday for you.
Okay.
But we appreciate you coming on, and we'll invite you back at some point whenever we come up with another fun event for us.
Gotcha.
All right, you have a
All
good
right,
night.
boys.
Thank you.
You too. Take it easy, boys. See you
Good night.
later.
Whimsy.
Whimsy.